Well, that was the game. Welcome into the Odds and Audibles podcast. Matt Prehm, Erik Skopil on the show. Post-game edition, 41-7 Oregon. In the 129th game, formerly known as the Civil War. I think Erik and I are going to call it the Civil War, even though it doesn't have an official name anymore. But this was a game, Erik, where a couple of my buddies, a couple of people on the message board have also said this. A couple of people on social media have also kind of talked about it, where there were some gripes, most of it being, I don't think, legitimate gripes that you could be making. But I think you could argue that, hey, like for the first quarter, it was 7-7. Oregon probably wasn't playing to their standard. They had one really good drive offensively, and then they punted their next drive. I think they maybe got like one first down and then punted. And then Oregon State, they went 3 and out on their first drive. Great for Oregon. And then a 13-play, 64-yard drive that took up 7 minutes, almost 8 minutes of game time off the clock, resulting in a touchdown. And I think that sequence kind of maybe diluted some people's opinions of this game because, yeah, Oregon didn't play to their standard the whole 60 minutes of this game, but that's really hard to do. Don't get lost in the picture that Oregon had put up 585 yards of offense. They allowed just 147 yards. You gave me a stat. I'll let you share that on, Oregon State star receiver. That was just mind-boggling how well Oregon performed. And we walk away from Autzen being like, this is a game in which they won convincingly. They didn't cover a spread, but the spread was ludicrously high. And yet there's going to be things that Dan Lanning's going to find that are going to be even, to harp on to make this team even better. And I think that's scary to me because Oregon obliterated their rival. The gap is getting wider between these two schools. And yet Oregon played exceptionally well for 3 quarters, but they had a quarter to start the game in which it was kind of a ho-hum performance, and they still looked this impressive. We're running out of ways to get super excited about this team because it's the same story every single week. They obliterate their opponent, and it's hard to find faults.
I think you can say pretty comfortably, like, okay, they've played, 16 quarters of football.
Yep.
They played 2 that probably aren't up to standard, and it just so happened those 2 quarters were back-to-back. Fourth quarter at Northwestern, first quarter today. Outscored, 21-10 in those quarters, something like that, right? Because it was 14-3 last game, 7-7 today. Everything else has been extremely impressive, and it's hard to find too many faults that really, really should concern you from my perspective. Now, does it mean things we saw on Saturday that were maybe less than satisfactory won't be problems against Penn State? Because here's my big takeaway, and we'll talk about it all throughout next week. I still have really no idea how good, where Oregon is. I know they're very good. I know there are individuals on this team that really jump off the page. They've also played 4 teams that weren't on the same level as them, to put it lightly. There was no team that played. You think none of the FBS teams are probably going bowling? I wouldn't think. Montana State remains a very good FCS team. Doesn't seem like this is their best team in recent history. This is a team that's been playing for national championships. Kind of doesn't feel like they're quite there this year.
They're 2-2, by the way, and they won a game against Mercyhurst University Lakers. Tell me where that's from. Maybe Minnesota, I'm going to assume.
No idea.
No idea. Never heard of this. Didn't even know Mercyhurst existed today before just now. They won 17-0. So, to your point, this maybe isn't their best showing of a team yet.
Right. Well, yeah. For some Montana State, for Oregon, it's 14 out of 16 quarters. I think everybody can at least sign off on was up to the standard, above the standard. I mean, I think Dan was pretty clear today. He felt like they played really, really good football the second, third, and fourth quarter, and I don't have any reason to disagree. Right? I mean, they won those quarters 34-0 in a rivalry setting where it was just not competitive after that first quarter. You go to the drive chart. You mentioned the way it started in that first quarter. Oregon State has a long drive, and Oregon struggles to really get much going after their first scoring drive. And then after that, it's touchdown, 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 field goal, touchdown, a punt, a field goal, end of game. It was utter domination, like you ran through statistically. Oregon offensively almost hit 600 yards. You were very close, Matt. Very close on that prop.
Very close.
I
thought I was going to get it.
Which one of us had picked Oregon State under 150? Because I guess that was just sitting there for us. Unfortunately, the 53 or less rushing prop I put out there didn't land. But this is a stat that really stood out to me, or I guess a couple of things. Oregon State ran for 67 yards in this game, 2.6 yards per carry. But it was, to me, and I guess this shouldn't come as too much of a surprise based upon what we've seen today, but we thought Malik Murphy physically had the tools to maybe cause some problems. Oregon just eliminated him from the board. 5 of 18, 68 yards passing. And their alpha receiver, Trent Walker, I'm looking here, and this is, I think, what Matt was alluding to a second ago of a stat. This is a guy who had like a 28% target share in this offense, has led the team in receiving each of the last 2 years. He didn't get targeted in this game. Not even a single target, according to the stats here. That's pretty mind-boggling in terms of how they just eliminated the passing game. Like Malik Murphy, 5 of 18. This is a guy who was throwing for like 300 yards almost per game coming in. He had 68 yards. And really, we have to acknowledge 21 of those come on a busted coverage that Oregon has in that first quarter that sets up the score, where I don't know whether it was Jaden Kennedy, whether it was Theron Johnson, if there's supposed to be safety help, but clearly Jaden Kennedy thought he was passing Taz Reddix to somebody, and there was nobody there. And even Malik Murphy, with the way he was playing, was able to find him. And frankly, it probably has to be a touchdown if you're being honest, for a good throw. The fact that it wasn't was kind of maybe a startling sign of the game Malik Murphy was going to play. But I thought the defense was fabulous in this game, pretty much in every facet, aside from that first quarter with the pass coverage mishap I just mentioned, and then a couple instances where both Hankerson and Saladin Allah kind of broke through and found some holes and got upfield on third down, where I think Oregon was probably in the wrong defense for that kind of an approach, I guess. But other than that, like this was pretty dang impressive. And like I said a second ago, Matt, and I'll throw it back to you. It's just like I don't know what translates from these games. I really have a hard time knowing exactly where Oregon's at. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we come out of Penn State game going like, gosh, those first 4 games they really threw us off the scent, and this Oregon team is not as good as we think. Or if we're coming out of that game going like, oh no, like this Oregon team is so legit, and it was hard to tell because the competition wasn't up to snuff.
Yeah, I kind of joked about this on social. I joked about it on Duck Territory in my instant reactions. The cupcake wars are over. Like Oregon playing 4 straight teams that collectively could win 8 games, 9 games. It is over, and we're going to get a real good idea now of where this team is at. Now, the one thing I will say maybe of Oregon football and what we've learned is it's really hard to play perfect no matter the quality of opponent. I mean, go watch a 7-on-7 practice, and those teams, they're going on air. They're throwing the football against nobody, and there will be incomplete passes. Sure. You will not be perfect every single rep. As much as Dan Lanning wants to strive for his team to do that, that's just a very difficult, almost impossible feat to accomplish. And through 4 games, this Oregon team, who's been very inexperienced, who's learning to play as a young squad together for the most part, they've really not delivered the clunker of a game. Maybe you want to claim it being Northwestern with it being 34-14, but remember, it was 34-0 midway through the fourth quarter before Oregon pulled all of its starters and had third stringers in against Northwestern's first team. Eliminate the garbage time, and this is a team that's basically obliterated every opponent. They've not overlooked anybody. They've not had a game where, oh man, at halftime, Oregon's only winning by 3 points or 7 points. And going into the fourth quarter, this game is close. Like, Oregon's got to put them away. Like, honestly, Erik, like, is it 31-7? Is that the closest it's been for an opponent going into the fourth quarter? And that being today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like
that checks.
Like this team has passed all its tests You can't, and yes, you have to make a caveat. They've played basically 4 teams without a pulse, but they can't control how good their opponents are outside of playing Oregon. And when they've stepped on the field with Oregon, they've made them look like the teams that they are, really, really bad. So for me, like I'm 100% in agreement that we're going to learn a lot next week about Penn State, about Oregon, how far this team is, how good this team actually is. But they're at least doing what you're supposed to do in these games when, excuse me, when under previous regimes, that hasn't been the case. They've been clunkers. They've been losses to horrible teams under previous coaching staffs at Oregon. This one, you truly believe it when they say it's coach talk, but you truly believe it. Like, we're literally just dialed in on the process this week. We're not worried about next week, whatever the opponent. That's what Oregon's players said all post game today when they're asked about about Penn State. Defensively, it's hard. Like, I don't want to get this lost. 147 yards. That's such a low number. And Malik Murphy, you and I kind of talked about during the week leading up to this of, hey, this kid's really good, but if they don't have an offensive line to protect him, or if they don't have receivers available to catch his passes, it doesn't really matter how good he is. He's not going to look good. I think they made him look even worse than I was maybe anticipating. 5 completed passes, 7 as a team for Oregon State, 80 total passing yards, 32% completion percentage. That's the lowest completion percentage since the 2007 season. And do you remember what game that would be, Erik?
Was that the lowest opposing quarterback percentage?
Yes. It also came in a game in which Oregon's was also absolutely atrocious. That's a hint for you.
2007 was that was like the Cody Kempt game or something?
Yes, Cody Kempt game.
And who was the other quarterback? Gosh, I'm blanking. And they played. Was it against UCLA?
Correct. UCLA in 2007 is the last time that Oregon's defense allowed that low of a number. It was Oregon lost 16-0 in this game. The two teams played 5 different quarterbacks, and they collectively completed 15 out of, doing quick math here, 56 passes.
Oh, good Christ. Sorry. Apologies for that choice. But that's terrible.
5 interceptions in that game.
Gosh.
So you longtime diehard Duck fans, go back to 2007 when it was the Cody Kempt game. It was at UCLA. And remember how horrific it was to watch that game play out. And that is a similar performance for what Oregon did today against Oregon State. Now, Oregon didn't have those problems, but they straight up eliminated the pass. And when you can't throw the football and you can't run the football, you get a performance like you did from Oregon's defense.
Yeah, I mean, big tip of the cap there. Let's go Oregon offense just a little bit here. I mean, Dante, there were a couple of miscues, and again, I had some pushback when I said he missed throws. I'll need to go back and rewatch the game because, frankly, when you're up in the box there, you're getting like maybe a replay on the big screen, but oftentimes not. And so some people suggested that the balls weren't as poorly thrown or that there might have been contact at the top of the route that kind of created the incompletions. But there were some moments in that first and second quarter where they missed a couple of opportunities, both the Decorian and Malik Benson down the field. But gosh, was he dialed in? Like I don't know. Each and every week, I feel like you see the maturation and the growth of Dante Moore. I mean, 21 of 31 is like 68% completion percentage. Is actually the low point, I think, from a completion percentage perspective. But 305 yards, 4 touchdowns, threw it all over the yard. 8 different guys had pass receptions. 3 guys had more than 60 yards, and Malik Benson had 40. So four guys had 40 or more yards, and were just very involved. And it's the usual cast of characters with Decorian, who we talked about on our Thursday show. He's good. He looks fine. Yep. Wasn't even on the availability report. So that was a big sigh of relief, I think, once everybody got to the stadium and kind of saw he's good. He's available. There was, quite a bit of back and forth in the lead up this week about what his status might be. He kicked off the game with that touchdown reception. We can talk more about him individually, but the 4 players there with the Corian, Malik Benson, Kenyon Sadiq, Gary Bryant Jr., that really it kind of feels like a group that's separating as Oregon's kind of primary pass catchers. And all of them had big moments. All of them had big plays and I guess it was nice to finally see. I mentioned earlier, Dante and the receivers didn't connect on a couple shots downfield that were there. It's good to see him and Gary Bryant connect on that 49-yarder. It was a great throw. Obviously, Gary, whatever Oregon State was running defensively, didn't account for him. He was basically wide open. It was kind of a layup, but a long layup down the field, if you will. Loved what I saw from the pass game. And then, Matt, you almost got initially your prediction was not only 600 yards, but it was 300 offense or 300 rush, 300 pass. You almost got that too. I mean, 280. So, 305 through the air, 280 on the ground. And again, a bunch of guys were involved, and just about every running back in this rotation had a moment or two where you said, hey, that looks good. I thought this was the best we've seen from Mekhi Hughes. 6 carries, 33 yards, also had a catch for 20. Where was that last week when I predicted he'd have 50 yards? But 1 week too late for my predictions, but still encouraging to see that pre-Penn State in terms of that's a guy you have to account for. Thought Jaden Lamar ran really hard, had some nice runs. Didn't really have a lot of big, long explosives like he's had in the past, but it seemed like he very rarely went down on first contact. And then this was another thing, back to Dante, was really impressed with his ability to get the ball downfield with his legs, right? We talk so much about his decision-making as a passer, and Dan mentioned this, attached to the decision-making as a passer is his decision to scramble. I don't know if any of his 7 runs were designed. I think they were almost exclusively scrambles, including a 30-yarder that helped set up the touchdown right before half. So, I was really impressed with basically every facet of the offense. Doesn't mean it was perfect, right? They had a couple of holding or procedural penalties in one of their drives in the second half that forced their punt in the second half. And like I said, there's a couple of miscues on some passes. A couple of times I feel like the running backs maybe didn't find the hole and there was maybe more available there. But again, it feels like you're kind of nitpicking. And overall, once again, you rack up almost 600 yards and have 41 points scored in a rivalry setting. That's pretty good.
Dante Moore, I was really impressed with the maturity level of his game, the growth that he's showing. He didn't, and this is the things look, we got to dig deep to find really significant improvements in these types of games. And this is one of them, because this was probably the worst statistical start he probably had in his first 4 games of the year. Was completing just over 50% of his passes in the first quarter. He had a touchdown pass, but then you go through the second quarter into the third. I think he completed 8 or 9 straight balls in a row. He had 2 touchdown passes. He was effective with his legs. And if you didn't watch this game, you look at his stats and you go, wow, he dominated. He killed it. He must have just been on fire from the start. And he wasn't. And yet the box score will show that he was. And I think that's maybe a sign too of just this team and its growth, where they didn't play perfect and it still looked like they dominated essentially for all 4 quarters of the game. And they did a really good job in that regard. Couple things about Corey Moore I had written down on my notes. I wanted to ask you this.
Okay.
His back shoulder catches, ability to make plays is very good. And it led me to ask the question to myself of, when's the last time we've seen an Oregon team have a receiver who's that lethal and that type of a catch, and that play can be such a go-to move? I don't even think Tez or Troy Franklin were those types of receivers where it was literally just, hey, just throw the ball up and let's let this guy go one-on-one and make a play because he's going to do it. Last time that's happened, Drew Davis, Lavaisier Tuine, Dwayne Stanford.
Yeah, you're getting into the range of guys. Like, and the thing though, I hit 3 catches. I think they were all that kind of a player,
Yes.
weren't they? Right?
Yep.
I mean, that's what stood out. And not only is that impressive from DeCorian, but I also think that like to make that throw and have that dynamic, because Dan kind of touched on it. Like, I think those are kind of routes where he can either try to burn you deep or he can kind of peel off and catch it back shoulder like that. The fact that he and Dante were on the same page on so many of those and connected on, I mean, one for a touchdown, one put the ball at the 1 yard line. I think the other was like a 20-yard gain on their second drive, was ended up being a punt. Like the fact that they're 4 games into this, and the chemistry there is
Really good.
It's really good. Like I mean, I don't know if this is totally true, but it feels like it's comparable to like Bo and Tez, and those were guys who grew up playing football together. Like, and again, that's maybe a step too far at this point, but you see the like you said, the maturation of Dante. We see the maturation of these 2 guys working together, and like how special that could be for not only the rest of this season, but theoretically for a couple more years if these guys choose to stick around and play together. And frankly, with how well Dante's playing, this could be a real short shelf life at Oregon. I mean, I hate to say that. You hate for it to throw out like, is a guy going to be one and done after 4 games? And again, hasn't played any quality competition, but the arm talent is staggering, and the connection those 2 guys have is really impressive. And so I think that's a good. Did you have another DeCorian thing you wanted to touch?
Oh, just on top of that, DeCorian now has taken over the lead for receiving yards, 207 on the year. It's 4 games. It's going to change. Malik Benson's only 6 yards behind. But I think the bigger point I was going to make was these 2, along with Gary, have really kind of solidified themselves. And I'm really impressed in particular with Moore, but we kind of expected that. And also with Benson. Benson was the wild card, and he's kind of straight up lived up to 5-star JUCO recruit billing that we had heard a couple of years ago when he came out of JUCO.
Yeah, no, I've been writing about him the last couple of weeks. I totally agree. Coming in, he was leading the team in like all the receiving stats, receptions, targets, yards, touchdowns. 3 for 40 today. I feel like all those came early too, and in big spots the first half. You watch him, like a couple of catches he made were not easy catches too, in traffic. I also had kind of a similar kind of a back shoulder grab down the right sideline, on the Oregon sideline, I guess. That was a big conversion, I think, on 3rd down. He's looking like a Sunday player. I don't know if we expected that. I think he's going to test ridiculously well. He'll probably run like a 4.3, mid 4.3 is my guess, based upon what we've seen in the track speed and the way he separates. And if you can be a reliable catcher of the football, which frankly, the only reason we wondered that is because of one drop in a spring game, which was, I hate to say it, we had a whole offseason with one data point of the only time we saw seen the whole team play. And we probably made that more out than it needed to be. He really stands out. Switching gears entirely, unless you wanted to stick at
Go for it.
I was going to say, I think one sequence that we haven't touched on, that not that this game was ever going to get away from Oregon, but that was really important from wrestling momentum, and I think you know what it is, Matt, fake punt.
Yeah.
Because if they're forced to punt there, they give the ball back to Oregon State to maybe come down. And again, I'm not convinced Oregon State was ever going to have much sustained success offensively. And probably more than likely that drive would have resulted in a punt back to Oregon, and Oregon would have come down and scored anyway. But the fact that there was kind of the ballsiness to sign off on that, although it sounds kind of like it was just a James Ferguson Reynolds read, Matt, based upon what he said.
Sort of. He was asked about the play, and the quote is, "Yeah, I just went out there for a normal punt and grabbed the ball and saw a big gap and thought, why not take it? Never run in my life." So that's where the slide came in. I had a little bit of fun out there. Got to be a football player for 5 minutes. I wish I could do that in the Australian accent that he has, so you get the full scope of it, but I do not have that skill set.
Or with the mullet, or with the wonderful mullet that he also has.
But then he was asked later on a follow-up of, hey, was this like you have free reign to do whatever you want? And it was a yes, but also a no. He said, in certain situations, I do have a free reign. In other situations, I automatically have to punt it. This was one of those where I had the choice But then he joked basically though, if I choose to run it and want to and do, I better get the first down because I'll be benched the rest of the year if I don't do it.
Well, and the other thing you have to realize is that the normal approach for his punt is 3 or 4 steps in a rollout like that.
Yep.
And you can see how that would be confusing or like disorienting or whatever for an opposing team. So, but that was, again, low key gets lost because Oregon goes on to just rattle off like 5 straight scores or whatever, 6 straight scores with the field goals, I guess. And you just kind of forget about that play. But that was like a pretty pivotal moment. And, good read, good. I mean, I hate to say it's Oregon State special teams has been terrible all year. It's like probably why they didn't beat Fresno State. So I'm not surprised there was a game-changing play on special teams, considering Oregon's been solid there and Oregon State hasn't been. But, it was a big moment there to potentially see the game kind of go the other direction. And that set up what was the drive to go up by once, go up a touchdown, they go up another right before half. This game never kind of is close again, and we see what happens. Back-to-back years, by the way, where Oregon just blanks Oregon State in the second half. Because last year it was 22-14 at half, and Oregon wins 49-14, and this year it was 21-7 at half, and they win 41-7. So pretty impressive.
I kind of think I know your answer to this, and maybe it I would agree with you. More impressive fake punt. Casey Rogers against, I believe, Colorado, or Trent Ferguson Reynolds.
James.
Yeah, James Ferguson Reynolds. Sorry.
I hate to say it though. There's a better candidate. It was Jordan Birch last year. Remember that?
Yes.
And he showed like I thought he was Trace Chan Holden or something because of how fast he was. For the pure novelty of it being a punter running a football, that has to be that to me. That's the answer. Even though Casey and Jordan being like 300-pound people who moved incredibly fast with a football,
they're both also NFL dudes.
There's like NFL players, and maybe James Ferguson Reynolds is an NFL punter, but he's not an NFL athlete. And the fact that, and honestly, the quote afterwards where he was just like, "Yeah, I just decided, shoot, why not? Like, I've got an opening, let's run." Like that's a different kind of dynamic. So I'll take the, maybe it's being kind of a creature of the moment, but that felt like the pick for me.
Quick couple updates. We didn't get any Dan Lanning before we get out of here. We didn't get any Dan Lanning comments on this, but there were some notable maybe absences, but also notable guys went through some workouts. Give us kind of the update of who didn't play but dressed.
Well, I guess Dylan Williams, Noah Whittington, Austin Novosad. It was notable to me, and I've seen it suggested like, hey, rivalry game, let's get the local kid, Brock Thomas, Sheldon High School. Let's let him get that last series. It was a surprise to me. I thought that was an Austin Novosad opportunity, considering he was cleared. We watched him throw in pregame, which he hadn't, at least the last time I watched him. I don't know. I can't. Did Austin throw the ball at Northwestern pregame? Do you remember?
I don't believe he did.
Okay. So I thought he was available. The fact that they didn't go that route was, to me, a little bit of a surprise. Kind of a surprise they kept Dante in that far into the game. Dan said afterwards that basically, if it was if we had more than 5 minutes, we were going to just keep him in the game, kind of a deal. So that was the reasoning there.
I didn't like that reasoning, by the way.
You didn't?
I don't know. I thought the game was over. It wasn't worth the risk, in my opinion.
I kind of agree, especially with what's coming up next, and with the fact that you're playing a rival who would probably love nothing else than to ruin a season by, I don't want to say taking a cheap shot, but by hitting a quarterback who is running the ball a lot. Yeah, I understand the logic. I also understand the logic of like, we're going to try to get as many reps as possible with our first team offense going into the biggest game of the year. Let's not, put this one away too early. Noah Whittington also looked like he was moving perfectly fine pregame, did all the reps except for when they started doing 11 on 11, and then he was not involved. So list is questionable. What do you think, Matt? Like I'm leaning he's available next week, but it's hard to say considering he's now missed the last 2 games.
Yeah. And it's a slight concern for me. I do think Jaden Lamar is extremely undervalued by the Oregon fan base. I do think he is a really solid running back, a productive running back, a physical running back. I don't think people realize how hard of a runner he is. I mean, he hurdled a guy today, and on his descent back down to earth, he got hit, and the Beaver defender bounced backwards, and Jaden Lamar continued to just go forward midair. I thought that was really impressive, just the sheer strength that he can create. But I do think that this team lacks a spark plug or just a little bit of juice with Whittington unavailable to play at the running back spot. So, like, if he's not available against Penn State, that feels like a pretty substantial dip in the arsenal of opportunity Oregon has at the position. I really hope he can play, because I think he takes this offense, which is humming without him, to an entirely different level, though.
Yeah, I agree. No, Whittington is not a good thing for this offense, quite clearly. That doesn't mean the offense can't go, but if you want to be at firing on all cylinders against Penn State, you hope he's available. The other one that was interesting, or kind of newish, was Justice Lowe, who did not dress. He was in sweats and a beanie on the sideline. Didn't see like any clear indication of what the injury was. It wasn't like his arm was in a sling or he was in a boot or he had a knee brace or something like that. So I don't know what exactly is going on there, but his back-to-back games, he's not been available. At this point, they have 9 scholarship receivers on the roster. 5 are playing and 4 aren't, is the count, right? Like that's kind of concerning. Like that doesn't make you feel awesome. So we'll kind of monitor what's going on with Justice, but I would imagine he's out this game, probably doesn't play at Penn State, would be, I think, a fair expectation. Trying to think. Dylan Williams did go through stuff pregame, didn't end up playing. That was a change. He'd been listed as out the last couple of weeks, but he was listed as questionable today. Still, Braden Platt still out. That's pretty much the list there. Again, Decory Moore being available was like the big.
That was the big one.
The big thumbs up. The big, I think, question mark now going into next week is what's going on with Noah Whittington? Like, is he available? Because I agree, Matt, and I think listeners will agree. The offense is better when he's available. They've still got plenty of bodies. They can split the workload like they did today against most teams. I do agree that they'd be missing a pretty large component of this offense if he can't go next week against Penn State.
All right, I think that's going to do it for us here on the Odds and Audibles podcast. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday night if you're listening to this tonight, or enjoy your weekend. Next time you hear from us will be on Monday. Send in your mailbag questions. Erik and I will get those going. A ton to talk about this coming week as Oregon heads to number 2 Penn State, for a potential top 6 for sure, probably maybe potentially top 5 showdown between the two teams that last played in the Big Ten Championship. Oregon won that one, and a game that will give early positioning for the pole position within the conference for this year's Big Ten Championship game. You can listen to all our preview shows and other podcasts around this game here on the Odds and Audibles podcast. Go to duckterritory.com for more coverage of your Oregon Ducks. But until then, you've been listening to the Odds and Audibles podcast.
Talk to you later, folks.